We are back. Man, it feels good to be back behind this microphone. Talking Tumors is back. I am Carson Horn. We're here to talk about SEC Media Days. College football is right around the corner. We're around 40 days, depending on when you're listening or watching to this episode, away from Auburn football kicking off the 2026 season, the first year under Alex Golesh. Cannot wait to get this season kicked off. And if you're wondering what this show is or what is going on here or why we haven't been around in a while, I will explain all of that a little bit later in the show. But for now, just know that we are back and that we are here to talk about Auburn football. You can see got a little updated imaging going on here, updated logo. Again, I'll talk more about that later in the show. But I thank you so much for diving back in and being here. Whether you're listening or watching, I greatly appreciate it. Before we get going, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the show. It would mean a ton to me. I appreciate it if you're able to do so. But let's get into it now. Let's talk about SEC Media Days. And to my friend Henry Patton of the Auburn beat, who mentioned that you really shouldn't take anything away from SEC Media Days with more or less what he had to say on social media. Look, Henry, you're not wrong. Okay, I get it. But how are we going to have a show if we live like that? We can't. So we're going to take some things away from SEC Media Days. You always have to be careful not to make too much of them, but there are some things that you can discuss that we can talk about that are maybe a little bit notable, and we'll talk about those things on today's episode. So let's get into it now. First off, I just want to say I thought Auburn was represented really well at SEC Media Days, and I haven't always felt that that was the case every year. One, Alex Golesh did a great job representing Auburn University and his program, but also with the players that he selected to join him, and Champ Anthony and Alex McPherson and Byrum Brown. All three did a fantastic job, were very respectful, and did a great job answering questions, did not say anything inappropriate or that could come back to haunt them. Just really a stand-up job from all three guys. I'll talk about all three players a little bit later on, but great choices by Alex Golesh and great job by all four of those individuals that were there representing Auburn University. I think they made Auburn proud in the way that they handle the media, which can always be a tricky and challenging thing to do. So great job by those guys. Let's talk first about some of the things, though, that Alex Golesh had to say that maybe stood out a little bit. First off, he avoided any major headlines, and I give him a ton of credit for that. And that's not always been the case for Auburn head coaches at SEC Media Days. Just take us back to a year ago when Hugh Freeze had some comments that he probably later regretted about Auburn and the expectations to be in the playoff, and that he felt that Auburn should be in that conversation. He caught a lot of people off guard that said, oh, he just backed himself into a corner, which he kind of did. Now, if you'll go back with me to last spring, I think that predated what he said last year at SEC Media Days. Remember, he had the comment about, well, Auburn needed to at least make a bowl game. I think the playoff statement that he had at SEC Media Days was trying to make up for that. Instead, he kind of dug himself a bigger hole. But suffice it to say, Alex Golesh avoided any of those major blemishes. He avoided some of the headlines that some other SEC coaches made. When you think about some of the things that John Summerall said about throwing a podium, jokingly, he said, at a reporter when their phone rang. Think about Ryan Silverfield, the new head coach of Arkansas, being asked if he had aura and responding the way he did. Some of the things Pete Golding said that were a little bit off color, to say the least. And then, of course, Lane Kiffin always brings his own drama and whatnot. So Alex Golesh was able to avoid the headlines, which is what you want. You don't want to create any controversy or any stir there. So I thought he did a good job handling things. Probably the most controversial thing was what he said about goals, which the complete quote is his explanation of how he feels about goals. However, the clip and the main takeaway from it that everyone loved was, quote, I don't set goals, ... Because again, there was a little bit more he said there in the middle. I set standards, which said like that sounds really cool. And it kind of took off a little bit on social media, at least amongst Auburn fans. But for some people, they may hear that and say, what? You don't set goals? That doesn't sound right as a coach, as a leader of men. What do you mean by that? Well, first off, let me say, I think, in my opinion on goals, as someone who is a counselor in training and hopes to be a counselor one day, goals are important. I think goals play an important role in life. I think everyone should have goals for what they want to accomplish, what they want to achieve. Goals can take many different forms and shapes, but nonetheless, they play an important role. However, I understood what Alex Golesh was saying here. He was saying that his focus is on the process. And if you've ever heard Alex Golesh talk, you know every time he speaks about this Auburn program, he spends an inordinate amount of time talking about how he is a process-driven individual, and everything he does is about the process. It's about what can I do to succeed here and today. It is not, yes, he has long-term plans. Yes, he thinks about the future, but he's not focused on that. He's focused on the here and now, what needs to be accomplished. And if we can check this off, okay, then check the next off, and then check the next thing off. If we do all those things, then we'll ultimately achieve what we want to achieve. And so that is his focus. And that's why he's talking about standards versus goals. It's not that he just whoop-de-doo, whoop-de-die out there, whatever happens, happens. That's the furthest from the truth when you look at someone as intense and as competitive as Alex Golesh is. His way of approaching it just may be different than some others that are just looking at the ultimate prize instead of what's it going to take to get there. And that's what he's focused on. What's it going to take day in and day out to accomplish what I want to accomplish for this program to be the best that it can be? So I think that was kind of the intent behind what he said. Is not a lackadaisical approach at all on his end whatsoever. But that was probably the most attention-grabbing quote or headline that he had at SEC Media Days. And again, if that is the biggest drama that you have, that's pretty good. You did a pretty good job there. But he did say a few other things that were notable that I wanted to hit on. He talked a lot about identity because he was asked, when you skip forward to the end of the year, what do you want to think? What's the identity of this team going to be? What's the most important thing that can happen for this team after year one? Well, that was some of the questions he's had along those lines. And essentially, his response was, I want us to exit year one knowing what our identity is. Alex Golesh has in mind what he wants the identity of this program to be, and he can say it, but ultimately the players have to go out there, they have to play the games, and they have to set it themselves. And by the end of year one, you'll have an identity set. It could be good, it could be bad, and ultimately you want it to be good because you want your program to continue to improve. So when you think about Alex Golesh and his program at USF, and you think about his coaching style, he was asked what he wanted that identity to be. He talks about intensity. He talked about effort. He talked about the way that this team plays, and he talks about being really good in the margins, being really good with the fundamentals of the game. And that is, I think, music to a lot of Auburn fans' ears because that is not something that Auburn fans have experienced in the last several years. How do you lose as many one-possession games or many 10 or less points games as Auburn has? You're not good in the margins. You're not good in the fundamentals. You don't pay attention to the details. You don't pay attention to the little things. That's how you lose that many close games. So if Auburn exits year one and you look at this program and say, yeah, they play their tails off. They're extremely physical. They're a detail-oriented team, and they play fundamentally sound football. I think Alex Golesh will be pleased. And if that means that your offense is high octane as well, or if that means the defense is a really aggressive defense, that's good too. But the identity, you want it to be set. Because then, once that is set, hey, you know what you're going to recruit to. You have something, also a proof of concept to sell to those recruits to say, hey, look, you see how we did things? This is how we're going to do things. And we're going to continue to improve on this and get better at this. And hopefully your wins continue to increase year in and year out, no matter what the win total ends up being in year one. Golesh didn't say it at SC Media Days, but he said in previous interviews that his biggest fear of year one and what would potentially make year one a failure will be exiting without that identity. To exit year one and say, we were kind of all over the place. We did this well at some points and the other points we didn't. Then you're kind of still trying to reestablish things and you're still not sure what your program's going to be. He knows what he wants it to be. Can he get it there in year one? That's what we'll find out. But it's something that if you look back to one of the reasons the previous regime and Hugh Freeze failed is because the identity was never established for the program. There was never an identity. There was constant turnover, especially on the offensive side of the ball, trying to figure out what Auburn wanted to be, what they wanted to be about. And also, I don't think Auburn recruited well in some aspects, but I don't think Auburn recruited to an identity either. And I think that created some issues and created some problems. So Auburn is searching to find that in year one under Alex Golesh, and if Auburn can find that, I think Golesh will consider that a success for the first season. He also mentioned about the offensive line. He said in the spring that he asked for prayers. It was a joking manner, but I don't think it was completely false in the way that he was explaining it. He said he feels good about the offensive line, feels better about the offensive line room than he did in the spring. That should be calming to some Auburn fans that were concerned. I still have my concerns about the offensive line. I'll talk more about that in the fall camp preview episode that we'll have coming out soon. But it is good to hear that he feels a little bit better about that group. They're going to play an important role in how far this team ends up going this season. So you need that group. Stanton Ramil is back healthy. He said the left tackle transfer from Michigan State. That's a big deal for Auburn to get him back. One thing that I thought got glossed over a little bit, which surprised me, was that Alex Golesh said he felt this team had enough talent to win every game. What he did not say was that Auburn is going to win every game or that Auburn is the most talented team in the SEC. That's not what he said. He said they had the talent to win every game, meaning the potential is there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. Auburn is not going to win every game, and Auburn is not going to be the more talented team in multiple SEC games this season. However, it was nice to hear that compared to, again, I hate to keep beating the dead horse here. I won't keep talking about Hugh Freeze much longer, but it is good to hear that compared to year one under Hugh Freeze, where he's talking about, well, we got to get the talent better. We got to get the talent better. Is this going to be the most talented team that Alex Golesh has at Auburn? No, absolutely not. He's going to have more talented teams than this one. However, it is good to hear him have confidence still that this team is talented enough to be competitive in the league. And that's all that Auburn fans want to hear from their head coach. That's all that they expect, I think, in year one is, hey, be competitive out there. Can you get the most out of the talent on this roster? And you can, and that means 8 wins. Or even if that even means 7 wins. I think Auburn fans will understand that and be pleased about it. It's just getting the most out of the roster because Auburn has had rosters that coaches have failed to get the most out of. And you've also had, again, the complaining about rosters not being talented enough and using that as a crutch or an excuse. Golesh hasn't done that to this point. I don't expect him to do that at any point. So it's good to hear him say that. He also understands that Auburn fans don't have the patience for a long rebuild. It's just not the case anymore. You're in the transfer portal era. Even Lane Kiffin's having to deal with this a little bit at LSU. The expectations are the expectations, even if they're unfair. And I think it's to a certain extent they are in the transfer portal era a little bit unfair because you still are having to bring in so many new players and you're bringing in so many new faces to expect instant success. But I get it. Auburn fans have had 5 straight losing seasons to deal with. They expect improved results immediately, and Alex Golesh understands those are the expectations, and that is good for the Auburn head coach. And lastly, overall, it's hard to tell. I just mentioned that he talked about the talent, but it's hard to tell overall how he felt about this team. He was positive, of course, but what coach is going to be at SC Media Days and be negative? Not many. Maybe Steve Spurrier or some back in the day, but most coaches are going to paint their program in a positive light at SEC Media Days, as they should. So there wasn't a ton that I could really take away. When he gets into fall camp and he starts sharing a little bit more in detail and he gets asked more pointed questions about specific players and position rooms in general, I think we'll be able to get a better feel and a better understanding of how Alex Golesh thinks about this team, but he didn't give away too much at SEC Media Days. Moving on now to the players, just want to briefly hit on a little bit on each guy that represented Auburn at SEC Media Days and talk about some takeaways from them. Starting out with Champ Anthony. He's had a long career. He started out in JUCO. He transferred to Auburn. He has dealt with injuries. He's been a really good player when healthy. He was a captain last season, one of Auburn's better defensive players when he's on the field. But he's had a hard time staying on the field. He was asked what his main goal was this upcoming season and said, I just want to play all 12 games. And I hope that for him. I hope he gets that opportunity. He's a guy who loves playing football, and you got to appreciate that, especially in this day and age. Someone who just wants to strap it on and get out there and play. And that is who Champ Anthony is. And he's a fun player to listen to, a fun player to watch. He loves playing the game of football. And I also wanted to make the note of what he said about DJ Durkin. You didn't get to read the full quote. I encourage you to go find that and read that. but I'll try to summarize it the best I can. And essentially, what Champ Anthony was saying was lavishing praise on DJ Durkin and saying, as long as he was at Auburn, he wasn't, Champ Anthony himself was not transferring. He could have transferred. That wasn't going to happen. That they ride for DJ Durkin, that he is their guy. They weren't leaving. It's admirable, the type of coach that DJ Durkin is and the way that his players feel about him. Can't take that for granted. Not every players feel that way about their coaches. And to have someone who is an intense and extremely hard on his players at DJ Durkin, but also has the respect and the love of his players like that is special. And DJ Durkin obviously is a special coach and has been a really, really good defensive coordinator for Auburn. And we see here a big reason Champ Anthony returned, and I think a big reason a lot of those guys on the defensive side of the football returned. Next up is Alex McPherson. What an incredible story from all the health issues that he's had to go through to be able to continue to kick and to be able to do it at a high level. He says that he is back to full strength, essentially back to what he was prior to the health issues that he's had. That's incredible. I saw him out eating dinner with his wife the other night in Auburn. That was really cool to see, and it's great to see him back at what looks to be full health, or as healthy as he's going to be at this point. I hope it continues to stay that way. He said that he is kicking up to 60 yards now. I think he mentioned he did that in practice, which is really, really good. Remember last season when he kicked, his accuracy was good. It was just a week-to-week thing as far as his strength went, and that kind of varied, and therefore he couldn't kick very long field goals. But great to see him at up to 60 yards. That's impressive, and that is a really good sign for Auburn. I also wanted to share the story that if you didn't see, that Alex Golesh shared about him, and that was through these summer workouts, spring workouts, Golesh said this is going to be extremely difficult, and they'd had some really, really challenging workouts, and that he told the training staff, like, hey, Alex doesn't need to go through this. This is going to be really brutal. Just have him do some other stuff off to the side. And Alex McPherson said, absolutely not. I'm a part of this team. I'm going to go through what everybody else is going through. It doesn't matter what I've been through. It doesn't matter that I'm a kicker. I'm doing what the team is going to do. That speaks extremely high of Alex McPherson, the individual, and it speaks to why he was chosen to come to SEC Media Days. That's who you want in your corner. That's who you want on your football team. That's who you want as a leader. Just incredible. I love that story, and I was grateful that Alex Golesh shared that. And so Alex McPherson, great representation of Auburn. And then finally, Byrum Brown, quintessential leader. He is a quarterback. He's a veteran quarterback. He's confident in himself. He's confident in his abilities, but he's not arrogant. He doesn't come across that way at all. He did a very good job in all his interviews. Of course, he got pushed around about the throwing motion. If you missed all that in the spring, Byrum Brown has a long throwing motion. It's a legitimate concern. I'm not going to dismiss it completely, but I also will say that long throwing motion allowed him to still pass for 3,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards last season. I don't care what his throwing motion looks like or how that may affect him in the NFL if he can help Auburn win football games. And that's essentially what he was trying to say without being cocky or without being arrogant. And he handled it really well. Some of the questions about that, again, is it a legitimate concern? Fine. Is it a major concern of mine? No, it's really not. And I don't think it is of Alex Golesh or of Byrum Brown. And then he made a note of just what he wants to accomplish at Auburn. He only has 1 year of eligibility, but he mentioned just wanting to get Auburn back in that conversation. So when you only have 1 year at a place, you do think about, well, what can be my legacy in 1 year? Probably not going to be Cam Newton, where you can come in for 1 year and go undefeated, win the Heisman, win a national championship. But you can still cement yourself as a pretty good legacy if you know, hey, you know what I left behind? I left behind a program that I got back turned in the right direction. And Byrum Brown can do that. And he can get Auburn back turned in the right direction this year and lead Auburn to a successful season. He can look back and say, hey, I started something there, and ultimately I didn't get to see the ultimate fruits of my labor, but I set the foundation. We talked about identity earlier. He can help set the identity for this program, and that will leave a pretty strong legacy if he's able to. So overall, takeaways from SEC Media Days, kind of as it pertains to Auburn and the rest of the conference. Auburn was predicted by the media to finish 12th in the SEC this season. I think that's completely fair. I think if you look just purely on a overall roster talent standpoint in the SEC, Auburn's probably in that bottom half. Now, my thought is you've got a quarterback who could potentially be a top 5 SEC quarterback, So even if you've got a bottom half talent roster, how much can Byrum Brown pull this team up and put them in the upper half of the SEC and be a top 8 team in the SEC versus a bottom 8 team? I don't know. We'll see how that plays out this season. But I thought 12 was fair. I know some Auburn fans were upset about that. Again, also 5 straight losing seasons and a first-year head coach. It's hard to figure out where to put these teams. I know Florida, I think, may have been the highest ranked for a new coach at 9. I think they were. And the John Summerall and Alex Golesh conversation was a storyline at SEC Media Days. It will be a storyline through week 3. And the reason being, John Summerall for a while looked to be the leading candidate. I believe he was the leading candidate for the Auburn head coaching job. Ultimately, he landed at Florida, and Auburn hired Alex Golesh. Auburn and Florida are similar programs. Both have been struggling, but both historically, I think, top 15 programs in college football. So they are compared, and there are a lot of similarities there. So these two hires are going to be tied together. I ultimately think both are going to be successful, but they're no doubt going to be compared. And that's why that week 3 game is going to have a lot of attention on it, and it's going to be a really exciting and fun matchup in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And I'm looking forward to that one and seeing how both of these coaches do in year 1. But that was one storyline that we did see kind of starting to take shape a little bit there at SEC Media Days. Some of the things off the field, pertaining to the field, of course, there's a storyline of, is the congressional legislation that's supposed to bring stability to college sports going to pass? You had the situation with whether or not the SEC is going to break away from the NCAA. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. I just wanted to make a note of that. Either way, whatever happens, I think Auburn's going to be okay. Auburn is in a fortunate position to be in the SEC. Auburn is a well-supported, well-resourced program and university with as far as really good support from boosters and the board and the president, all the way. Everyone is pretty much in alignment there. Whatever happens, Auburn is going to be okay. They're going to be in a fine position. Ultimately, personally, and I think many of you share this view, I hope there is some sort of stability soon in college athletics and we get back to more of an even playing field. But I don't have much hope that's coming anytime soon. Those conversations continued at Media Days. Okay, so let's wrap things up, but I did want to just talk briefly about the show a little bit. Yes, I've been on hiatus since late spring, since basketball season kind of wrapped up. A lot of things going on, but I did want to get the show back for this fall for football season. But I also wanted to bring it back better than ever before, hopefully. Needed to make some improvements. Logo needed to be updated. We made some changes, tried to improve the quality of the show. We're still in the process of continuing to look for ways to improve it. But we are back. We are back with Talkin' Tumors. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show. That way you're notified when new episodes drop. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to give it a like and subscribe there as well. That'll help you. We're always looking for feedback. If you have it, please let me know. Trying to make this show the best that we can make it. If you've never watched this show or listened to this show before, thank you, first off, for tuning in. But also just to give you a little bit on who I am if you don't know. Again, I'm an Auburn alum. I'm an Auburn fan. This show is not a journalist. I'm not a journalist. This isn't a Auburn beat writer show. I'm simply giving you a podcast from an alum's perspective, from a fan's perspective, just talking about Auburn sports like you and I would if we were having a conversation somewhere. That's really the goal of this show, and give you my perspective. I try to bring context. That's a really important thing for me. I'm not into hot takes. That's not my thing. I look to bring context into every situation, try to look at both sides of it, and then give you my opinion on things. But again, ultimately, this is a fans show for the fans, and that's what Talkin' Tumors is all about. And I hope that you'll continue to check it out, continue to look for new episodes that will be on the way soon. We'll have an episode dropping, talking a little bit about Auburn basketball this summer. We'll also have a fall camp preview coming soon before fall camp starts in less than 2 weeks. So be on the lookout for those episodes, that they will be dropping in the coming weeks. And again, we'll have plenty of content rolling into the fall. So thank you again for watching or listening.